way across the room. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, January 24th. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good morning to everyone. At this point in time, as we look at our agenda, are there any changes or adjustments to our agenda this morning? Any changes?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support to approve our agenda as written. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we have our public comment period, and this is a chance for citizens to appear before the Board of Commissioners. The public is welcome to address our county board on any matter of county concern, and when invited to speak, speak into the microphone for clarity, sign in and state your name, address, and the topic you're addressing. Do we have any individuals in the audience who would like to speak today? Seeing or hearing none, are there any comments that have been sent in via email?
Madam Chair, we did receive an email yesterday from County resident Paul Coe. Mr. Coe writes, at your upcoming board meeting, you are being asked by Visit Cook County to endorse the request to the state legislature to renew the 1% county lodging tax. Sections 14 and 15 of the lodging tax agreement address the administration fee. It states that the tax administrator can charge a fee of up to 5% of the revenues collected. It appears that when the lodging tax was initiated, the fee was set at 1%, subject to review and increase at a later date. With the large increase in payroll that was just approved, now would be a good time to increase the administration fee to 5%. The additional 4% would be ongoing and would help decrease the levy burden on taxpayers. Please consider this before voting on the endorsement.
Thank you so much. Any other comments that were sent in? All right, we will move on at this time to our consent agenda. And are there any items a commissioner would like to pull? Any items a commissioner would like to pull? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So movement, support.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Storley and support from Commissioner Mills. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on at this point, we have Robbie Hass, our highway engineer, and a couple of important items to share with us in the community this morning. Welcome, Robbie.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
First on here is a bridge replacement. We've talked a lot about bridges and different infrastructure things in the past. This is an exciting one to get done. It's another one of our deficient structures in the county that is being replaced. You can look at the abstract that's on there and see, this one was, we ended up with 3 bidders, which is great. I think it illustrates the point of getting stuff out early. And gets us a good price. We talk a lot about engineers' estimates, and we're getting a lot better at it. So the more we do, the better we get. So you can see with 3 bidders, and the low bid is Northland Constructors of Duluth for $619,400. And I guess I would recommend awarding to them and then answer any questions anybody has.
Well, I really am excited, too, to get 3 bids on something because oftentimes we get 1. And so that is really encouraging and nice to see that some of them aren't so far apart. So that's encouraging as well. Any questions or comments for our highway engineer? Seeing or hearing none? Commissioner Mills.
Good work.
Thank you.
All right.
And I would like to, one thing to add, I guess. This particular project originally was slated to use bridge bonding from the state. The legislature did not pass a bonding bill, so that left us with no alternative, with the exception of levy dollars, to do this project. And the only reason we're able to do that is because we are able to set up a savings account to kind of do this with local money. And so I would just like to hammer that point home of, the reason we do have that account and the reason we do squirrel away that kind of money is so when projects like this come up, we can do them and do them well, basically. So anyways.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
What percentage do you squirrel away?
Sure. Right now, I believe in our budget, it's 200,000 or 200, I have to look at the numbers, $200,000 or $250,000 annually.
And is,
so,
what kind of a percentage is that of your annual intake?
like
Well,
of
let's
our
say-
levy or
yes,
like
from
our?
just the levy. because
Okay,
you
so
have
our
other-
levy demand, I don't know what it is this year. It's typically around, I think, 2.5 or 2.6 million, somewhere in that range. And so then, 200. So, you can look at the numbers too and look at it as, if we put away $200,000 or $250,000 a year, culverts are costing $600,000, so, and that is arguably a less expensive project. As far as bridge replacements are concerned, you want to start talking about, kind of your beam span type bridges, even timber bridges, you're, $1.5 million easily. And so I think, having that set up and having that almost a contingency in place where we can afford to do this ourselves, even if it takes a couple of years, I think that's okay. But I just wanted to illustrate the point that, we didn't get bridge bonds because the legislature didn't pass them, but we were still able to do this project and still better our infrastructure here in the county because of that. And I'm bad at quick math, sorry, so. I
That's
can't.
fine, that was close enough.
All right, other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the contract for the Sawbill Creek Bridge to Northland Constructors of Duluth.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's about 10%, sorry. There you go. Needed a minute.
Did Brady just
Somebody
message you?
whispered to you.
Brady messaged me, no.
If he
but I'm
winks with the
checking.
right eye, it's 10%.
Yeah.
If he winks with the left, it's 50%.
Yes.
Brady, you can speak out anytime
Yeah.
you want.
No, he's doing fine. He said 4 million levy and 35%, I would have spoke out or something. Really close.
Close enough. Thank you. So the next thing we have on here is a professional services agreement for our Raise grant application. We talked about this last week at our committee of the whole meeting. And I would like to award this contract to kind of our team. And so the team is LHB, AFLA, and Tool Design. Tool Design is leading the application in this regard, so the award would go to them, and the other two consultants are their sub-consultants, but they're a part of it as well. And so I would ask the board award this to them for $72,000, and if there's any more questions or discussion, obviously I'm open to that too.
Any questions or comments? I'd just like to thank you for working quickly and feverishly to be able to accomplish this, and I want to thank you on behalf of District 4 and
Sure.
the Gunflint Trail as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is there a motion to approve the signing of the agreement with Tool Design?
Support.
All right. Is that a motion? We need a motion
Motion
first. All
to
right.
sign the agreement with Tool Design Group LLC.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
And now we have Rowan Watkins with MIS, our Management Information System. Commissioner White.
Thank you. Management Information System.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So today, the first item we have is the approval to spend $102,522.24 in budgeted funds for regular replacement of our workstations, laptops, MDCs or mobile data computers for sheriff's office, copiers, and servers. And so we have a replacement schedule for each of these. This is organization-wide. As an example of that, our laptops are on a 3-year replacement schedule, and we have 100 laptops. So each year, we try to do about a third of those. And each of those follow that math based on the replacement schedule for each category. A couple things just to provide some context. The number here is a little higher than it has been in the past. Mobile data computers are new to the MIS budget this year. That had come out of the sheriff's office previously, and they had paid for it in other accounts and grant funding in the past. But for us, it made sense. They're computers. We replaced the computers for every other department in the organization. Why wouldn't we do that here? So that's a change. 2 other items just for context. Our copier replacement, just this year, because of how our replacement schedule falls, we're replacing 3 instead of 2. So that's 24,000 instead of 16,000, 8,000 per unit. And then lastly, our server replacement. You'll see in the packet that the quote that we put in there is actually higher than what we've spec'd for individual replacement costs. And the idea behind that is that we're actually increasing the capacity on the servers that we have, which we call hosts, and then consolidating the virtuals, with the ultimate goal being that we're actually going to reduce the number of hosts or total number of servers. So we're going to be going from 8 hosts, physical boxes, to 4. And the total replacement cost for 4 larger, more capable servers will be actually about $10,000 less than the cost of 8 at the price that you see there. So that number will adjust a little bit and move, but on a 5-year replacement schedule, we're looking to bring that number that you see there of 8 total units on a 5-year replacement schedule to 4 total units on a replacement schedule. And this is the second one at this price that we've bought, so we're about halfway there. Would stand for questions on this item.
Any questions for Rowan, other than about your individual laptops? All right, seeing or hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the replacement on the schedule. And I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate the foresight of planning ahead and 5 years and knowing projecting what you're going to need. It really is helpful in budgeting purposes. So I will make the motion to support the request.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rowan. I really appreciate the explanation of the differences and the changes. And I was also wondering, is this going to help with your department in managing servers if there's half as many, or are the virtual servers going to take a similar amount of time to manage?
It'll be similar.
Okay.
I think the biggest difference is just that our overall footprint and the amount of infrastructure that we're responsible for here was trying to consolidate that. And it also puts us in a position where if some of the virtuals that right now we have on premises and have to have here open up for the possibility to be hosted cloud solution, that's easy enough for us to change and not have a lot of excess equipment that we don't need. So I think it's a transition in the right direction.
Commissioner White.
So are these hosts all physically situated in the courthouse? In your space, or
It's
where
a-
are they?
A couple are here at the courthouse and a couple at the law enforcement center.
Okay.
And there's one at the community center as well. So they're spread out throughout our network.
Okay.
Other questions?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to also thank Rowan and his team for their work on this. It is one of our goals as an organization to always look for ways to improve the way we do business. And I think MIS is very good at that. So thank you for your work on this.
Commissioner Mills.
Also, I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but which is your favorite server? Just kidding,
The one we're getting rid of.
It's a sad day. Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion to approve the spend of the budgeted funds for a replacement schedule.
I think there's
All right, we already have a motion.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry, and a second?
Yeah.
We do.
Pardon me.
I have one more
Appreciate
question.
your support.
I'm really excited.
I have one more question. What do you do with the old ones?
They need to be wiped. So like we do with the computers, the PCs, the hard drives will be taken and they'll be certified destroyed because of the data that's on them.
And where does the physical,
So that we store them here until we can have a professional company come up that provides the receipt of the documentation for that. Once that has been done and the data is secure through that process, the rest of the components can be electronically recycled. And we work with Brian and his staff through maintenance to have that done on a regular schedule.
no, but it's a physical thing, right? The host is a physical,
Yep.
what do we do with those? Are they stacked up?
Two things. Yeah, they'll be sitting here until we actually pay a company that comes up and shreds components that could pose a risk if we can't just sell them.
No.
And so they'll shred those components, and then what's left of these boxes get electronically recycled. So it's twofold. We hold them in a secure location until somebody can come up and pull the hard drives out, shred them, and then what's left gets electronically
Okay.
recycled.
Good question. All right, other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And now we have Jay DeCou joining us to talk a little bit about tower agreements.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. You will find in your packet 2 negotiated lease agreements to benefit the county. The first one is a commercial lease agreement between AT&T, one of our major carriers up here, and the county. This is for the Lutsen Tower District located at the top of Eagle Mountain. This, as you read through the agreement, a little bit of background on this. This lease was, well, the presence of their equipment on Lutsen Mountain was negotiated a long time ago before we had a formal process for getting people into lease agreements. And so they approached the county to amend their agreement, which was really not much of an agreement, which then started the conversation about what we have in front of us. So this, this land lease agreement is for a chunk of land located in that tower district for which AT&T will pay us for the right to use. This will include their generator and their building. The tower that all of their equipment is located on belongs to another entity, American Tower. You guys will be seeing an agreement with them coming down the pipe in not too terribly long, too. The benefits of this agreement: we take care of our liability. We have agreements with them and understandings about access and easement, and also we're making some money on it. So it's not a significant amount of money, but $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, with a 3% escalation per year. The lease itself stands for a 5-year term with 4 additional terms on it. So after 25 years with that 3% escalator, it'll be okay. So, and considering we weren't making any money on this arrangement before, it's not so bad. This also follows market rates for the square footage that they have. We rounded it up a little bit just for ease of calculation, and there we have it. So that's the first one. Any questions?
I'd just like to comment, thank you for that 3% escalator.
Yeah.
It's good for the county.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to approve the negotiated land lease with AT&T.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The second agreement that we have in front of you is a cooperative agreement between the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in Cook County. This is for 2 of our tower locations, one of them at the Gunflint Magnetic. They call it Magnetic, we call it Gunflint, the one overlooking Gunflint Lake, and the other one is for the Mount Maud site up on the Grand Portage Reservation. These are interoperability agreements between government agencies, so we do not charge them rent. We just have a $300 a year utility fee to cover the use of electricity and also to help us cover some of the expense of keeping those sites open for the winter, plowing and also upkeep on the buildings, things like that. So this one, I tell you, I started working on this one last March. So the Customs and Border Patrol are hard to nail down, but we finally got through to the right person and we got it all taken care of. A lot of work for $600 a year, but we got there. And now, similar to the previous agreement, this takes care of our liability and our access questions, and also formalizes our arrangement with a major stakeholder, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. So, with that, I'll entertain any questions. Or go for
Questions for Jay? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jay. I don't have any questions, but just good work. Thanks for your perseverance, and it's great to get these in place.
Thanks. Yeah, I had to talk with someone in Texas and South Dakota and Cleveland and California in order to get this one done.
All right, well, it takes more than a village, doesn't it? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Since you're here, this brings up a couple of questions, and I know that there's no answer because you haven't answered it yet for us. How about Verizon service up by the border, and how about Verizon service down like in Tofty?
Absolutely.
Any movement there?
So the Verizon service up in Grand Portage is the development of a tower for a Verizon carrier in Grand Portage has been handed off to the tribal government itself because of the possibility of creating revenue for the tribal government with that structure. As far as negotiating construction right now, they're trying to find the best location, and they're also trying to figure out the best agreement for that to benefit the tribe. So that's in the tribal government's hands. We stand here, like I've offered to Chairman Deschamps multiple times, like that we are a resource available for them if they want that. And we've had some conversations about possibilities for how we could assist. But that's their baby right now. As far as down in on the west end, Rowan and I are starting the process of working on developing another BDA, a bidirectional antenna. It's basically a booster for the armor system located right outside of Tofty. So this will be another tower structure that would be capable of co-location if Verizon so wished to put an additional carrier system there. So that's possibilities. We don't really have anything nailed down yet.
Great. And do you need land for that then? Are you putting the tower on a separate piece of land?
We already have a commercial agreement with MnDOT to use a location in one of their gravel pits outside of Tofty. So,
Okay.
so that's all. It's all pretty much negotiated already for the location of the tower. Now we just need to find people to put stuff on it and pay us money.
Great. Thank you for the update.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And is it accurate-ish to say, I mean, we just don't have the population for it's kind of in Verizon's court or whatever provider, and the reason AT&T is more prevalent throughout the county is because of FirstNet.
That is correct.
And so they had another incentive, a federal incentive to install systems in Cook County, and now Verizon is, they're trying to weigh the costs and benefits and plus the competition with FirstNet, so it's.
Go ahead.
Well, I would just add that the state had a role in there as well. I mean, FirstNet is a federal program, but the state in
State Armor.
they dictated some terms to opt into the FirstNet program, and some of that was rural coverage. In the initial first couple of years, there was, I believe, 25 sites that FirstNet had to build out in rural Minnesota to expand coverage, and we benefited quite a bit from that. The other part I'd add with Verizon is that they're directly in the township of Tofty. They have a weird arrangement with another tower. We don't own the property, we don't own the tower. It's kind of outside the scope of what the county's ability to manage, and the township, I believe, has a level of management over it. But for whatever reason, Verizon has decided to hang equipment there that is data only and not voice, and it's a weird anomaly. It's a weird outlier, and so I think that's part of Verizon's hesitation to add additional equipment in that area.
I do know that there are carriers looking to locate in the West End, because there have been conversations between MIS Land Services Department about inquiries coming in. So what that'll boil down to, I don't know. I keep telling people, man, we're building this great tower right outside of Tofty. That'd be a great place for you to put your stuff. So we'll see if they bite.
So is the county building, are we building the tower, or is that going off to the entity that you mentioned owned the other tower?
The county would be building this, just like we did with the Colville BDA, the tower off of the second County Road 14. It would be built to a lesser spec than some of our larger towers, like the GM11 tower up on top of the hill, but would still be capable of carrying two cell carriers and all of our armor equipment at the future standard for towers. So all towers are governed by a safety standard, TIAA. Now it's -H, and that's the one that we're building the tower to.
And is there oversight or inspection from an outside entity who inspects towers?
We do all of that. So we have a regular inspection schedule. Just this last October, we inspected 2 of our towers that were up for inspection. This coming year, the only tower that we have that's up for inspection is the Law Enforcement Center tower. But we'll probably try and get ahead of that and try and inspect a couple of the towers ahead of schedule, so that we can not have all of our towers pop up in 2 years.
And then do you submit the information, the reports that you inspected yours to the state or to some other larger entity than the county, or it's just within the counties?
That's on us.
It's on MIS, and so Jay visits the sites quarterly, all of our sites, and then, as he said, part of our operational calendar is a rotation for each tower site to be inspected by a tower crew that's trained to climb and inspect it for any structural deficiencies that we would need to address.
And I'm making the assumption that all of our climbing crew follows OSHA.
We hire that out.
Oh,
Yeah, that was one of my questions when I got hired here, was like, so
Am I going
I'm
up
gonna
there?
climb these,
Do I get to climb a tower?
and the answer was, well, you probably could, but you don't have to. So I'm just fine keeping my feet on the ground, thank you very much. I would also like to, this is kind of an aside too, I don't mean to take up too much time, but on an aside, I would like to explore the concept of having a drone inspection, or like having the ability to do that. But that's something for a different day. They have shown a lot of promise in getting off the ground and getting really close to the towers to inspect components without having to hire a crew, which costs thousands of dollars.
And in fact, that's something that the crews that we do hire do. And the different, so we get those photos, but again, it's on an annual trip rotation basis, so we're usually doing 1 to 2 towers a year. We're approaching now 13 towers that we own, and so it can be a little while before we get those photos. Other equipment that's on there too is LiDAR, which is really impressive to see. You can actually get the exact measurements for how a tower may be within the thresholds or not of the twist and plumb. It's
pretty cool.
So it's
Sounds like a future topic for a committee of the whole meeting.
impressive equipment.
I'm already gathering info on that.
Madam Chair, on average, how much does a tower inspection cost? I'm sure it varies according to height and the amount of equipment on it and so on, but.
Correct, and it depends on the type of tower as well. So our freestanding towers, which basically have three posts that are mounted to the ground and no guy lines, those are a lot cheaper than the guide towers that we have. This last year, we inspected 2 towers, the Mount Maud and the Gunflint, or the Grand Portage Information Tower, which are both guide towers, and the bill for that came back at $5,000. So
For
and
both
that-
of them?
For both of them. That was basically a day's worth of work for the tower crew.
And it's somewhere between 2 to 4 man crew, and a lot of it's travel time. They're coming up here and spending the night.
Yep.
All
I believe
right.
it.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you for all the information. That was really valuable. I think
No,
we
if you need anything, let me
all
know.
learned a lot. Great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good rest of the day. And Mr. Nelson is here from Land Services to talk a little bit about Lakeshore Septic's compliance for us. Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, everyone. Yeah, I come to you guys with a kind of a report on some success for us and an opportunity that presents itself to us. And just to go back in time a little bit to set some history into context as to, what we're even talking about here. Back in around the year 2000, we started a program called the Lakeshore Septic Compliance Program. And Minnesota Rules, Chapter 6120, requires that counties with shoreland areas establish, in addition to the regular state mandated triggers for septic upgrades, that there be some sort of systematic septic review and compliance type of program. Most counties had opted for the point of sale. In fact, the vast majority of counties have gone to the point of sale, whereas at that time, in evaluation of our staff and resources, we made the conscious decision at that time to really focus more of aiming our limited amount of resources and staff where it made the most amount of sense, which is directly in the shoreland areas and the riparian lots, as opposed to property transfers and transactions that might be in the middle of 160 acres with no water bodies near them. So it was really a targeted and conscious decision to do so. And we started the program with identifying a series of lakes. We originally picked 5 lakes, and we would go to each lake. Well, we did them in succession. So the first year we would inspect 1 lake, and I believe we started with Deer Yard or Devil Tracks, one of those. And we inspected everybody on the lake. And then, as per state rules, everybody gets 2 years to be able to upgrade unless they're an imminent threat to public health, which then they have 10 days to abate the problem and 10 weeks to go ahead and get that fixed, or 10 months, I'm sorry. So then in the next 2 years, after all of that lake was done, then we'd go to the next lake, and so on and so forth. Keep adding lakes. Well, we found that we were getting really good success with that, and so we applied for some grants, and we perpetuated the program, and at the end of that first cycle, we kept going with the program, readopting it, and adding new lakes and such, and they were all interior lakes. And so we've been from Devil Track and to, as indicated, Deer Yard. We did the whole kind of Caribou Lake watershed area with Ward, Agnes, and Bigsby and all that. And then we went up to Tom and did some other lakes, and then decided, because of the Topti Shoulder Sewer District area and their work being done, we decided, well, let's focus on Lake Superior, start on the west end and start working our way to the east until we can get the whole shoreline of Lake Superior. Pretty big endeavor, but we cut them into segments and just do what we can at a time. Well, by the mid-2015s time frame, we found that we were kind of a victim of our own success. We were engaged in so many inspections that we had accumulated more failing and non-compliant septic systems than we had the capacity to be able to achieve getting repaired and corrected and abated within the 2-year time frame. And we ended up with a huge backlog. So we made the decision to go ahead and pause that program so that we could focus on getting those upgraded. We work with the county attorney's office, and with as many systems as we had, it was very difficult, in addition to all of the work that they had outside of that, to really focus on getting these systems run through. So A few years back, we entered in and combined ourselves with the One Watershed, One Plan group with both us and Lake County, both the zoning departments and the soil and water conservation boards of each, and got into this grant that allowed us to retain outside assistance to help us bring all of those systems into compliance. And we're talking in the hundreds, not in the tens or dozens. And so we had broken that into Lake County has their own projects, we have our own. And over the past couple of years, we've actually been really quite successful and have winnowed that stockpile of backlog of failing systems and non-compliant systems down to less than a handful. So we, it was very successful over these last couple of years. At the same time, Lake County, due to their staffing shortages and everything like that, were not able to really fulfill most all of their projects that they had set aside. And so in speaking to the state, we got this grant sitting out there in these funds that we had been able to utilize all of our portion. They had not been able to utilize all of theirs. We got a year's extension on that grant from the state, so that is open until the end of 2023. But we talked with Lake County to say, hey, if there's any funds that you can't use, we sure can. And so they decided to go ahead, carve off a little over $68,000 to provide to us. And we felt in the position that we're at, that we have the capacity to go ahead and pick up with that program where we had left off, and just for 2023, engage in those inspections again. And generally what we do is we go out on RFPs and we get a contractor solely dedicated to that, so it's not taking internal staff to perform those inspections and get all that, of course, because we're taking on the vacation rental septic program from the Minnesota Department of Health as well. So Mitch is going to be very busy with that. So that's why we basically go outside and get retain a contractor. So we had left off somewhere on the Cascade Beach Road over by the Cascade Lodge, and we identified the systems that would need to be inserted. First, what we do is a records search to see who has certificates of compliance already and don't need to be inspected, and then we take that number and we're looking at targeting between over on the Cascade Beach Road where we left off to the western side of the city limits of Grand Marais. So bringing us up to the city, and we believe that we can do that with this particular side, or this segment here in this year. Now, so this proposal or this request is just for this year, just to utilize these funds that Lake County wasn't able to use and they're willing to provide to us. We don't have to worry about the match. We've already met the match for the entire grant, so it's not a match for us. So it's just a windfall for us to be able to utilize those funds and to get those systems inspected. I'm not proposing at this point to just continue on with that systematic approach until we get a little bit more defined. We don't want to find ourselves again with another huge backlog. So I'll be coming back within the next year or two with a proposal to start to see how we do want to do that systematic approach, because we do want to get the rest of Lake Superior all the way up east of Grand Marais, but we want to do so in a good orderly fashion that we can maintain everything and keep up. So this request for you is just to reestablish this program just for this year for the target area identified from that Cascade Beach Road area where we left off to the city limits of Grand Marais, and no cost to the county, no cost to the budget, and no match required for us. So it seems to be kind of a win-win-win.
Any
Entertain any
questions for Mr. Nelson? Commissioner White?
Couple of them. Who does the inspections? Like you said, you had a backlog, and Lake County, they had a staffing shortage, and then I heard you say that we get a contractor to inspect. Okay, is it county staff that has done those inspections, and then why is there a backlog? Because there aren't enough septic installers in the county to fix them? Or, you made the statement that we have local contract, we have a contractor do the inspection. Is it a local contractor, or is it any number of our contractors, or?
All very good questions, and it is a little more complex than just very simple answers, because there's a combination of things. The inspection contractor is generally different from the installation contractor or the design contractor. The state has licenses for septic design, they have a state license for installation, and they have a different license for inspection. And not all of our contractors are certified or licensed in all of those. Most of the contractors that we have are contracted just for installation. Then you get fewer that are in design, and some that are in design also have installation. And then we have even fewer, a very small amount, less than a couple, that are actually licensed in inspection. So we do the inspections when we can. Through this program, we just found it more simplistic to put out for RFPs. So if a local licensed inspector wants to bid on it, that's fine. We've had RFPs or proposals submitted to us from all the way down to St. Louis County. People have come up to do that program. And it's easier for an inspector to focus on a geographic location, whereas, with our internal staff, they have to inspect here, they have to inspect in Holden, they have to inspect up the Gunflint, they have to inspect. But if you have a specified geographic area, it's easier to do the inspections. And like I said, we've had a number of inspectors. None of the local contractors have even submitted proposals to do those inspections. As far as the upgrades, there is and had been a lot of work done. You have the housing boom and a lot of projects going on. And so there's a combination of, I don't want to say there's not enough contractors, but the installation contractors, that capacity has reduced. Some people are retiring off, and they're not being kind of backfilled by new contractors. And then there are some that are, there's kind of a loyalty factor where if somebody works up the trail, they just want to deal with that contractor up the trail. Well, then they get inundated and they can't handle all of the work that needs to be done. But people still are a little reluctant to go to other contractors, whereas some contractors could use the work and they're not just getting tapped to do that because geographically they may not be in the best place and situation. So we do have some brand loyalty on the west end and up the Gunflint and in different areas, but there is and should be sufficient capacity to get them done. Another kind of complicating factor is that it is kind of more attractive to septic contractors to work on brand new systems than it is to work on repairs. They're dealing with a fresh system. You're not getting in the mix, so to speak, with having to abandon and get rid of old stuff. You're just dealing with it brand new, and it's also combined then with grading and construction work for construction sites. So it's just there's a lot more incentive and a lot more attractive for contractors to be focusing on that. But at the same time too, and that's why we try to combine that with our low interest loan program, and we infuse that. We have that money set aside for those low interest loans to kind of help facilitate that. Whereas if contractors know that the money is there, it is available, it is to do, then they're more apt to jump in and go ahead and do that work. So it a lot of that bringing folks into compliance has to do with encouraging the property owners to really get into gear and secure that contractor and get the work done, more than it has been the contractors saying, no, I'm not going to do the work.
And some contractors are a couple of years out at this point.
Yes.
What is the cost, to have the inspector for an inspection? Is it when the RFPs, the request for proposals were put out, what's the amount that had to be given to the inspector for the work to be done, and how many places were inspected?
Oh, that's varied over the years. I mean, we've we've gone from just, a few $100 on up to more than that. The inspection takes also a pumping of the tank, which is about $300 that is infused with that. We believe that we would run out of, if not be very close to utilizing the entirety of that funds going from that point in Cascade Beach Road to the city limits. Any extra funds that we have that don't come in on the RFPs, and that's the thing about RFPs, you don't know exactly what those costs are gonna be until you get them in. And each year, it's kind of different. Sometimes people are more hungry than other years. But any excess funds that we have that go beyond those inspections, we do still have the capability to utilize those funds, either in acquisition of replacing equipment that we use for Mitch, for inspections, for our own internal inspections, or even in continuing on with the compliance side of things with the retained outside services that we have for that. So we have no doubt we'll be able to spend out all of those funds that are available to us.
Thank you.
Great explanation. And I just want to say I was at that meeting with the One Watershed, One Plan, where they allocated these funds, and it's really great for Cook County to get those funds to do the work that is here and that we can accomplish. So it's a win-win. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a win-win. However, in case I get any phone calls, what part of Cascade Beach Road are you starting on? The furthest west end, or halfway, or the whole thing?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Commissioner Storley. We had actually already been on Cascade Beach Road, and so we're picking up where we left off. There's not going to be any double-sided. So they showed me 2 weeks ago where that property we left off at, and I can't remember, but it's somewhere more in the middle towards the east side than it is towards the west.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
We can't see if we
questions?
can get it all in Commissioner Mills' district.
I'm talking about.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tim. I don't have any questions. I'm just really appreciate the success you've had with this and your department and your leadership with that. It's very tricky, as I think Commissioner White was alluding to, just to find the help we need and get all the ducks in a row and make everything line up. So I just really appreciate you thinking outside and what needs to happen and how we can achieve it.
Other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to authorize the continuation of the Lakeshore Septic Compliance Program to the tune of $68,128, one-time only use.
Thank you so much. Is there support?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
And now Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that Linda Jurek and Nick Kuzic are here from Visit Cook County, and it's Visit Cook County that's brought this request forward, asking you to endorse legislation to renew the 1% countywide lodging tax. Just a little history. So that lodging tax was approved by special legislation in 2008. For 15 years. It'll expire this year, November 30th. The purpose of this tax, a little different from the regular lodging tax, was to fund an Events and Visitors Bureau to advertise events and to directly support those events in Cook County. So the Events Visitors Bureau was created in 2007, anticipating the legislation, and has used the 1% tax to promote and support events since collection began in 2008. On September 14th, 2021, at Visit Cook County's request, the county board voted unanimously to endorse the request for the state legislature to renew the 1% county lodging tax. They were being proactive on this, but the legislature did not take it up, so the county board is being asked to renew again this support for legislation that we hope will happen in 2023. And we'll just leave it there, and if you have any questions, I think you have people who can answer them.
I'd just like to remark, I'm not sure how many times we've said something that we're working on at a meeting is because the legislature didn't get their job done last year. Here we are again. Questions or comments? Commissioner White.
For the public, listening public, Linda, the 1% tax, how much, this is informational, how much money does it bring in? And explain specifically how those dollars, the parameters for the spending of those dollars. I know Brady said it, but more than once is important for it to be understood, heard and understood.
Linda, could
Would you
you,
like to come to the microphone?
Nick, will you come up too, because I'm going to have you address that 1% piece. I'll go.
either one, either one.
Yeah, you can each have a microphone.
Totally, we collect 4%. 3% is under state statute Minnesota 469.190, and that 3% is allocated toward marketing, specifically our area. The 1% is an addition, and it's unique to Cook County. Like Brady said, it was adopted in 2008. Of course, as our lodging tax collection ebbs and flows, that 1% has ebbed and flowed, and we've really capitalized on the use of the 1% because we don't have, like in typical larger metro areas, an event center. So we use those dollars to support events and programming here, a lot of support to our not-for-profits. Think of, North House Grand Marais Art Colony, and many, many small not-for-profits like the Curling Club. And I'm going to let Nick talk to you about our budget this year with the 1% because he is the person that manages our 1%.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning. Yeah, the 1% budget, as Linda mentioned, ebbs and flows, and we don't have the collection numbers in front of us, but I have this year's budget in front of us, which it totals over $900,000 for what the allocations were, and the allocations are, as Linda mentioned, a process where we meet individually with our three tourism associations, which is a really great process because we get to really dive in even more so representing the county on a even further local level with the individual associations that represent Lutsen Toffee Tourism Association, Gunflint Trail Association, Grand Marais Area Tourism Association, and they get to decide how that money that they've collected in those areas is most impactful for them, understanding that the impacts go beyond their boundaries. So oftentimes these things that they choose to allocate money towards might be something that all associations combine to invest in, or sometimes it's an event that maybe one association might invest in on its own. But a long list of things that gets invested in by these associations, and it's grown by 16% actually last year. So as we know, some years the decision-making process is it's something where budgets are good and everyone might get kind of what they're hoping for, what they're asking for, what they need. Other years, historically, that hasn't always been the case, and tough decisions have to be made.
And I might add to, just as a new commissioner, we come before this board every July. Once our fiscal year ends, the end of April, begins May 1. So we're going to be entering into our fourth quarter now and working for our budget of 23-24. We come before this board per the rules around the 1% collection and present our budget to this commissioner body every July. So you have a chance to look at those allocations.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Other questions for either Linda or Nick? If not, I'd entertain.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would anybody like to ask any questions, or is this appropriate? I'm not sure, Commissioner Sullivan, about the administrative fee from early on.
That was where I was raising my hand. Thank you.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to talk about that.
Thank you.
That the communication received from Mr. Cole was exactly correct. By state statute, to administer, collect, and do the work to get the lodging tax, you can use any organization out there. There's many of our DMOs in the state that use the actual Minnesota Department of Revenue. We enjoy working with our local county auditor. It creates a sense of communication and community around that. And I know that the tax, or the administrative fee was increased a couple years ago from 1% to 1.5, and yes, it can go to 5. We, as an organization, would not be like, oh, terrible, don't increase it. It would be something for you to consider, definitely, because we want it to be fair and equitable, but more importantly, we want it to stay here. We don't want to look for somebody outside of Cook County, because I feel that creates a little bit of a crack in our system and in our communication and in our community relationships. So that letter is exactly correct. So something for you to consider.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Well, I would like to talk about that administrative fee, and I get it's part of I believe our fee schedule, because it doesn't have anything to do with this resolution.
Right.
But I would like to have some more information about that fee and when it changed from the 1% to the 1.5, how much that has meant, and then thinking about our increased wage costs, and the fact that I used to work in the auditor's office and helped with this. I know how much time it can take. Now, I understand we've put some new procedures in place with our vacation rental and doing things more online, but that was also a cost. So I'd kind of like to know, what is it costing us? What are we receiving? And I get it. It's hard. Not everybody tracks the time they're just working on this versus doing other things. But a ballpark figure of what is it costing the county to administer this tax?
Yeah, I'd like to come back
Yeah.
at a future meeting for that. I don't
Maybe a
think,
committee of the whole even
I
would
mean,
be a good.
Paul asked that we do it as part of but we can change that rate at any time. So rather than, I can give you some figures, but I think it'd be better to come back with
Yes.
a little more information
I think
than what I can give you.
So
right.
I'm asking in
Yeah.
public here for the rest of my board
Sure.
members that I think it's important that we understand that, so.
I thought we did some preliminary things. It was about 5% of the collected
Well, that's the,
lodging tax.
that's the statutory.
That was a joke.
Right. Oh.
I would add to, if I could, that, we, like I said, in February, we will begin in earnest with our budgeting process for 23-24. And so if there's any palette for you to be increasing that, it would be nice for us to know within our budgeting process so we can account for that accordingly.
Commissioner Mills.
And Madam Chair, I really appreciate you coming today and speaking to this again. And it seems like it never ends, but it is very important. Both the chamber have made that clear, local businesses have made that clear, the local tourism associations have made it clear, and BCC has made that clear. We've also heard lots of feedback about different options, different ways we can leverage visitor dollars as an organization and as a community. And I think since we have the authority to do this, and our costs are significantly higher, and we have some perspective of how much time this does take, and it sounds like you're not going to, cry foul at a 5%. I just think that's an assumption I'm making, that we need to do that, but it is important to talk more about it and to get in those details. But you all know me and my broad strokes. That's kind of where I see.
That's what, I want the data.
Yep, you want the
Give me,
deets.
give me some basic numbers and we can go from there.
Yep. I really do appreciate Mr. Coe's suggestion. I think it was awesome and well played.
Commissioner
And this
White.
might not fit in, this is tangent, if not part of it. We have a lot of visitors that come to Cook County. I mean, I've heard all sorts of what seem to be outrageously wild six-figure numbers that show up here.
Every day.
Right. And it puts a strain on the infrastructure of the city, the county, everywhere. And it's the taxpayer, the property tax, the people that live here bear that cost, not There are no tourist dollars that help to pay for the roads, are there? I mean, I'm not
Gas
aware of
tax.
that.
Yes, tax.
Some, I mean, a significant amount, but yes, you're.
I mean, so, you know, come on into Cook County or come into Grand Marais from the east end. Take a hot day in the summertime, you know there are more toilets flushing. I mean, and so this is, and I believe, I mean, this is a city issue, but their septic system or the water treatment is beyond the date for upgrade from when it was first installed. But anyway, I would like to know how much additional costs, if any of our departments could, like with law enforcement, how many more, much more time, how many more staff do you need because we have more tourists? How much more wear and tear on the roads? How much more, you know, there's a cost. And you know, and the taxpayer pays for it without, if you are a business owner, a restaurant owner, you work in one of these these businesses, you benefit from tourists being here, as it were. But if you don't, you're just paying for the roads and for everything else. And so I just think it's something that has been asked before, how much more wear and tear on our county is incurred because of and Linda, you could probably tell me if it was accurate.
I could tell you, I could explain a few things. Of course, you know, like you said, we at Visit Cook County, we take a lot of hits. You know, we're the bad people that bring the tourism here. When we talk about the cost of doing business in a tourism prevalent economy, there is also that economic driver, and you'd have to have an economist come in and look at that to figure out the pros versus the cons of that, because many of our businesses the people wouldn't be here if they weren't here for tourism. And I mean people that live here. So we, as Visit Cook County and the Visit Cook County Board, approved last August a study, because you know, when we talk about an 80% dependent tourism economy, and that gets floated out there a lot, you know, we have over 1 million visitors a year. We were really trying, and we do that within our marketing platforms as well, identifying where our tourists are coming from and where they're visiting, and there's all kinds of things. We're very, very aware of the impact of tourism, good and bad. Good and not so good. I won't say bad. So we engaged with tourism economics out. It's an Oxford University tourism economics program, and we are working with them to actually get to that number. How are we dependent on tourism? And we did go through the first draft of that report, and we, as an organization, the leadership of Visit Cook County, were just like kind of head scratching. It felt a little bit like some of the areas were plug and play, because they do this on a national level, and areas a lot bigger than ours. If there was one thing we found out through those discussions is, like we know, we're pretty unique. International border, public lands, Lake Superior, one road in, one road out, cost of getting goods here is, you know, all those things come into play. So that we are waiting, and just as recently as last week, I talked to the president of that organization, and we will be getting another fresh report in February. In addition to that, once we get that report, and I encourage you all to just think about this, it's been a while since we did our Go Team study, those results of that Go Team study, which was a Cook County initiative, and it was an economic analysis. Those results were distributed right when I got here and started my position with Visit Cook County in July of 2013. So it's been a while, 9 years. I mean, you have to keep that stuff fresh, and you know, you need, and especially when you've gone through a pandemic, you know, all kinds of things changed that we were not expecting, or could we forecast. So we are entertaining the thought of doing another study, like the Go Team study, that would bring in principal people from our county, and it's based on what occurred in Wausau. And it's called the Wausau Prosperity Project, and if you go online, you'll see an incredible 100-page report. And of course, you know, we're not like that, because we don't have other influencing industries like Wausau does, but they had a lot of good conversation, and it brought their community together, and they were able to collectively decide on where they wanted to focus. So We're just at the beginning of that discussion. I need to make some phone calls to see what that RFP looked like and who they worked with. They were with a company called Tip Strategies, Wausau used, so really exciting. You know, on top of everything that we do with marketing, really exciting to really answer in thoughtfulness and truth that economic question. So
Okay.
it's not lost to us, is what I'm trying to say, both with Visit Cook County and the Cook County Chamber of Commerce.
Well, you get that information, and I'm expecting that you'll share it with
Of course,
the entire
you
community.
might be a part of it. I might call you and say, hey, you want to serve on this committee? I do. Be careful. Be careful.
Well, thank you, and it sounds like, you know, you have information coming forward. We're going to gather some information here through the county, and so a lot of info and decisions to come.
And the 1% coming to you today, just so you know, the background of this, you know, with Senator Bach, who jacketed the bill for this 1% renewal, of course, has moved on. And Senator Grant Hochschild has jacketed this bill as well. So working diligently on that end. And he was the person who said, you know, I'm not sure if it's needed for this renewal of the approval kind of thing. But I was like, we both were thinking we got to cover our bases because this is going to come up pretty quickly down at the Capitol.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Well, very good discussion. Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank Commissioner White and Linda about just wondering about those numbers. What are our costs from visitors? I think it's important when we start having conversations with the state about what kind of options we might have to address some of the challenges that we have some data in our pocket to be able to share and to show impacts. I just think it'll be helpful, so thank you. Thank you for inquiring, and thank you for
Can I
thinking that way, too.
include something here?
Surely, Commissioner
You
White.
don't have to thank me for doing what I feel I should be doing as a commissioner. I mean, and data is the base, should be the base for all decisions that are made here. Department heads, they have data, everybody has their data, and it shouldn't be, you know, I was having a bad morning, and so I'm not going to approve anything, you know, because we're just how you feel about it. It's got to be data across the way, and that's our responsibility as commissioners to find that out. And I really appreciate that you are already doing that, because it's going to be a huge undertaking. I don't know how you truly quantify, you know, extra road usage or anything. I don't know, but it's great. You don't have to thank me anymore.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank Commissioner White for saying that I don't have to thank her.
God. I'm sitting right next to you. Understand that.
All right, back to business, guys.
For real, though, I do have one other.
Yes.
Just so I understand this correctly, this is 1%. Our administration fee has been 1%, now it's 1.5 of the total lodging tax collected, correct? And so if we had a 1% collection from 2021, it would be about $17,000. If we have a 5%, it's about $87,000. So that gives us some idea of the impacts that we're talking about, and you probably are well aware of those impacts too, but on how it'll affect your budget and how it could affect our budget. And with our staffing in raise as well as challenges, I think that's just good to keep in the back of our mind. And Mr. York, you had some.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments. Commissioner White, I really appreciate your question about what is the impact of, oh, I'm sorry. I forget that I thanked you. I didn't actually
I
thank you.
understand you appreciate this, but then you are doing also your job.
I have never been chastised for thanking someone.
You know, I mean, it's like, if I don't do what I should be doing, then it should be that I don't get reelected, or if I really do
Fair
something
enough.
wrong, I'm sure there's a process for ejecting elected people.
I will try.
There's a button under here that.
I will try never to thank you again for anything.
Okay.
But your points are really good. And in thinking about how we would go about trying to estimate what impact tourism has had on our organization in terms of our scope of work, the number of employees we have, that would be a tremendously difficult thing to tease out. And we can try doing some kind of estimate of that. It would be subject to a lot of assumptions. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that the answers could vary widely depending on what kind of assumptions you make. Thinking about something like the use of roads. Yeah, we have a lot of cars coming up here, a lot of pickup trucks pulling RVs, et cetera. What impact do they have on the condition of the road versus the semis that, the logging trucks and so on, that they use those roads? I don't know. I'm not sure that our highway department would be able to characterize that either. So just to do a reality check on what we can and can't do. There's a lot. It would be a very time-consuming effort, and the answers would be quite variable. So I just want us to all understand that.
I can just add one comment to that too. Is as I mentioned before, looking at environmental impacts, things we've talked about. We are doing the Leave No Trace program, which I know multiple of you are part of the advisory committee, but that's something we talk about. And looking ahead, we talk about trying to attract high quality visitors to Cook County. The more data we get, some vendors we partner with that help give us data. Long-term goals include trying to target visitors that stay longer. That just creates less in and out, less congestion, less road traffic. So just little things like that can minimize impact over time. But just additional comment there.
Thank you so much. Other comments or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support to endorse the 1% county lodging tax. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. No, I just thank them. They don't work, they're not county employees. And they're coming for money.
They're just doing their jobs.
It's just a nicety.
I like being
But they're
nice.
coming begging for money.
I don't know. All right, Auditor Powers.
Madam Chair, this is a request to amend our septic loan policy and procedures. It's a pretty minor change, but currently you allow the septic loan committee to make decisions on approving loans up to $25,000 for individual systems and up to $50,000 for multi-systems, like commercial generally. And we're asking to increase that, to double those numbers to 50,000 and to 100,000 to allow the committee to make those decisions. We sometimes, you go based on estimates, but sometimes we've gone over the 25. The cost of these systems has gone up tremendously since these values were put in. And so just for efficiency purpose and not having to come back to the board each time, this would help us.
I would just say, Auditor Powers, from having done some exploration about septic systems recently, I am really glad to see this direction, and it will, wind up giving an opportunity for you not to have to come before us so frequently. Commissioner Hawkins.
How many times have you come before us in the last 2 years?
Not much.
I couldn't find a single one.
Yeah. And there is one that we will be coming to you soon. But the point is, we do go over that number. We don't like to go over it when it's in the policy. Typically, you don't know the actual cost until it's done. You get a bid, et cetera. But, it comes in at 27,000, 28,000. It's like, we should just change the number because they're not things that we should be coming here and putting on board agenda. They wouldn't need to unless you really want us, that's fine, but.
And I guess that's
So-
where my concern is. This is county money
It is.
set aside. And just like the revolving loan fund, every loan that gets approved gets vetted there in the committee. It still comes before us, even if it's $4,000. It's still on our agenda for clarification and transparency issues. And I kind of think that if there are property owners using public dollars, there's nothing wrong with adding that to our consent agenda for transparency's sake. So, and the fact that we haven't had a single request in the last 2 years, the last one I could find was in August of '20 that went over, and it was automatically approved. I see this as not being an issue or a problem that needs a solution yet. Now, when I served on the Grand Marais Planning Commission, it seemed every single meeting we were discussing variances and setbacks, and that raised a red flag. Hey, maybe we need to change our land use policy or guidelines. And we did that, and now we don't have so many. So when we have a problem that comes before us, we as a board say, we got to fix this problem. But I still believe in transparency. If you are there's other avenues for people to borrow money, and we shouldn't be first on the list. I certainly want to have that available. We've set aside $500,000 previously to do that, and none of that has been spent yet. So when it becomes a problem, yes, come back and let's have a discussion. Should we fix this problem then? Or is a consent agenda okay to say, yeah, we approve it, or we have a issue? I would like to know more information about where are these, or who's getting this money, who's it going to, what kind of property owners are in need of this?
Yeah, so I just see a couple of ways. You could put it on the consent agenda. I don't think that would be much of an issue. The second would be an annual report, probably, and maybe both, which you haven't received.
So I wouldn't have to do a search on Civic Web of, when was the last time we did that?
Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, there's a fine line or a balance between streamlining government and having that full accountability, transparency. I know we can request that data. I am pretty comfortable upping this, especially because the costs increase. I certainly hear the argument that it has not proven to be necessary. However, I really appreciate getting ahead of problems rather than having to respond when they do come up. So thank you for thinking about this. But I do really like the idea of that annual report. I think that's very, very useful. But it's a little further in the weeds than I think we should be operating at as a board. We need to be looking at bigger pictures, visioning type of things versus when it comes to the revolving loan fund, those are usually enterprises that have a little more risk. This is more of a health and safety situation where we want to get, and water quality situation where we want to get everything in compliance and do what we can for that. So I don't feel the need to have any more oversight over this at this point.
And the other consideration, before you actually voted to do it, I'd want to go back to the committee and just play out, would we be delaying things, waiting for board meetings? When sometimes you got a 2-week delay and you got to get it on a week in advance and so forth. And a lot of times when these come up, finally at the end of the year, there's a lot of rush. Everybody's trying to get them in before winter sets in and et cetera. So there's a lot of things that cause delays in it already, and I wouldn't want to add to it. So.
Commissioner White.
Were you suggesting that we micromanage the dispensing of this money?
No.
Or just knowing after the fact that it happened, after the fact? So the timelines for the reporting would not be, we would not be pressured to make it by a certain time. It's just tracking the amount and the recipients.
So I have a thought.
And-
Maybe what we could do is amend this and make a motion to increase the amounts and require an annual report, so that we would have that information.
And, yeah, that makes sense, and maybe you would like a report more often than that. And can I go back to the committee and talk about that, and then come back with a recommendation?
Commissioner Mills?
I would find, again, you guys know me, I only need an annual report, and I would very much appreciate it before budgeting. That's when I would want to know about it, and then we can know how much of that 500,000, if we need to keep that there, if it should go down, or if it should go up, and what our needs are, capital needs, or just,
And I would think because of the timing when most of these systems are worked on, that we would be able to get that information by the time we're budgeting.
Yeah, that,
Most of that work is completed by the end of October, when the ground freezes.
yeah, you're not going to see a lot of activity for the winter months.
Right.
So you're basically going to get the previous year for your next budget.
sure. Yeah, maybe that's not so, timing for me is maybe not that critical then, but still helpful, perspective. Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion to approve to amend the Cook County subsurface septic treatment system loan program and policy and procedures by increasing the not-to-exceed amounts from $25,000 to $50,000 for single systems and from $50,000 to $100,000 for multiple connection systems, before requiring specific board or specific approval for the county board, as well as including a annual report.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Commissioner Mills?
As I was reading through all that, did you want to go back to the board first before? I mean, do you want that, do you want to talk to them before we make this amendment to the annual report, or you were saying?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't see that as we do annual reports for the Department of Agriculture where we get the loans there. I mean, it's routine to do annual reports there. We don't bring it back here.
Okay.
Commissioner Mills, would you like to specify a date by which that report should be provided in terms of the budget cycle?
No, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I'm still, would like to table this and think about this a little more and think about what our options are. I'm thinking the fact that we just approved septic inspections now along part of Lake Superior that is traditionally known with high incomes, high assessed values, and I wonder about the capability of those people to pay for their own systems, or it's easier to go through the county. That's kind of my dilemma here. I could see this getting eaten up by people who maybe have other avenues for that. I certainly think this program's good. I want people to use it if they need it. I don't believe all property owners need it. And that's where, sometimes if you have to have your name read out in public, I don't know. So I'm still struggling with this one of what is the best thing for the overall taxpayers in Cook County?
Commissioner Storley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what kind of a background information do you get when they come to ask for a loan? Have they gone other places? Is this the last desperate attempt to get money?
No, it's not that kind of vetting. The primary thrust of it is to get these completed and to incentivize the people who wouldn't otherwise, have the incentive, the ability to get them done. So there's been a lot of discussion over that. Should we look at it that way or not? and it's not specified, in the ordinance that way. So that's a bigger I think that might be a committee of the whole discussion on how to.
I just think our water quality as a county is critical, and as I sit on Soil and Water, as I'm part of the One Watershed, One Plan, Cook County, with what we have in place, has been wildly successful. We're a model for the rest of the state of Minnesota. And if it's working, I think we should continue the program that we have. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was thinking about what Commissioner Hawkins was saying, and I agree. There is a risk there, and I think we should take another look at the application process, and I think that would be a good committee of the whole discussion. As I just said, I'd rather take care of problems before they get here, and that could certainly come to be a problem, running that out. So, and there's a lot of assumptions on my end too, I don't need to make any assumptions.
Yeah, it was specifically in the policies and procedures back in amended in 2016, this was prior to that, 2012, to put in that there are no income eligibility requirements. So it was discussed, and we could go back, let's try and pull up some of that information too. Might be more, when we're setting aside $500,000, we haven't used it yet. But when we start getting into things like that, that impacts other uses of that fund balance. So at that point, it probably needs to be
Well, let's
revisited.
look at putting that on a committee for the whole, and thank you for going back and gathering information. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really want to characterize people living in a certain neighborhood that they would be well established with their money. I think it could happen anywhere. This side of Lake Superior, that side of Lake Superior, in town, if you have property on the lake. So I'd rather just look at maybe revising and looking at some of the guidelines that you already have.
I see that Mr. Nelson has joined us. Is there any information that you would like to share with the county board at this time?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I only caught kind of fragments of the discussion that was going on. But really we have a few of the different septic loan programs. This is still the discussion about that, correct? Okay, because I know there's a lag time with the YouTube thing. I don't want to jump into something else. But there has been a lot of discussion about it, over the course of the years. We do have different funds. We have a low-interest loan program. They have that are income-based, that do have requirements for doing it, and those are established by the state of Minnesota, that we get through the Ag BMP funds, and there's a process for that. There isn't as much money that comes down from the state as we have, and we find that people can be on the borderline of meeting those requirements and meeting not, and the cost of septic systems has really gone up in this county due to the amount of aggregate, the distances traveled, and things like that. And so it does boil down to kind of striking that balance between how much public good are we doing by affecting the improvement of our surface and water qualities to keep our county as pristine as we can with our resources, and yet limit or try to kind of minimize the impact on other folks. Well, in any case, that money's coming back into the county. So it's not as though it's free money. None of it's just free willy-nilly money. It is money that it goes out and it's paid back into the county, and then it's reused again and recycled. So we find that we have found that that higher non-income based loan program hasn't been utilized as much, but we don't want to utilize that as much. We do want to kind of target those places and the people and the families and such that do need that requirement. And you're right, the area that we target along Lake Superior, generally the people are able to to do that and afford those systems going in. This type of fund, we wouldn't necessarily anticipate utilizing it, even though I did mention that that is available, only because we're unilaterally going in and doing these inspections and we don't want to leave people hanging. But we have this program that is for people who are just adding an addition onto, and they may be inside of shoreland area, they may not even be riparian, but they're required to get an inspection by just even getting a permit to add a spare bedroom on for their mother-in-law moving in or something like that. And we want to be able to affect helping that out, and that's, they may find that that system is going to cost $40,000, and you know, so what investment that we can put on, still protecting the surface water and groundwater qualities, and have that money still coming back into the county. You know, it's always worth further discussion on that, and should we have any kind of income requirements on that, on the other fund that currently doesn't have, has been discussed a few times, even back when we even started that thing. And another thing, if I would go on a little bit, is dealing also in, you know, there are establishments, longstanding, I don't want to say resorts, because it's not used for that, but establishments that have much larger systems or collective type systems that take larger amounts of seed money. And what we do have is when it reaches a certain amount of threshold where the costs are great enough, it does, would demand county board approval to come in and get that approval if it does surpass a certain number. So I just wanted to throw out there that it all has been kind of contemplated and discussed, but, and those decisions were made at the time, but it certainly always is worth entertaining further discussions as we go.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tim, for more discussion. And I just wanted to clarify my thought and remark before about agreeing with Commissioner Hawkins. I still want to approve this as moved, but I also want to look at that application process and see who is, yeah, I just think that's wise way to protect your average Cook County taxpayer.
All right. Lots of good discussion. So we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can we take a break?
We certainly can. We will take, let's take 7 minutes. I don't, you know. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue in our agenda, and we are on item 8, Administrator Yorkie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at item 8A, if some of you are having deja vu all over again, it's because this action came before the board back in October. The issue at hand is that the Lutsen Trail Breakers, the Snowmobile Club, have for many years used an easement through a property that was recently acquired by a new property owner who has disputed the right of the Snowmobile Club to use that easement. And so the cover sheet for this item describes kind of the history of that. Back in October, the board approved the use of $5,000 for a retainer to get legal counsel in support of a lawsuit against the current property owners to try to provide permanent access to the easement. It's still in dispute. There's an emergency order that has opened up the gate that the property owner put on the trail, but the heart of the matter is still unresolved. So this request is to use up to an additional $5,000 to continue that legal action and hopefully bring it to a conclusion.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any questions? Commissioner Marais.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, if that's all right, to authorize the use of up to $5,000 to support a lawsuit against property owner Fetty to resolve property issues underlying the state aid funded snowmobile trail at Lutsen.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Further discussion.
Yes,
Commissioner
I have a
Hawkins.
couple of questions, sorry. You didn't see me
Absolutely.
before. But I'm wondering, this, we thought the original 5,000 was going to maybe move us closer together, and it didn't. Now we need another $5,000. Who's overseeing the scope of this work? Is it your office? Are you looking at the documentation from Tyson Smith and verifying where we're at in this process and why we think the next $5,000 is going to cover it, or is it not going to cover it?
Commissioner?
Go right ahead.
Yes, so the county attorney's office would be overseeing any of the invoices that come from Smith Law Firm. I can inform the board that where we're at right now, the complaint or the petition has been filed, an answer with a counterclaim, or a number of counterclaims has been filed, so Smith Law Office would need to not only respond to the answer itself, but to the counterclaims that are made, such as a claim for trespass, within that answer. So while they still engage in and are hopeful that they can come to resolution short of a trial, which will be really expensive, they have certain timelines that they have to meet in responding to the documents that have been filed. So $5,000 is a lot of money. I can say that when I worked in the cities, that was what we charged as a retainer as a minimum. So that would just get you to the complaint. And I wasn't going to admit this, but that was 25 years ago. So that was, yes, it was in the cities, but it was 25 years ago. I don't think it's unreasonable, given that he's engaged in some kind of discussions. They're reviewing a number of documents that they had to go through, filed the petition, and are examining that answer and counterclaims, as well as going through a scheduling conference.
Commissioner Mills.
I think Commissioner Hawkins was hoping for a dollar amount of how much more it'll cost, or if this would cost, but what I was gonna say is, like, it's court, right? It's law. It's like, what do you know, and how are you gonna?
And I understand, $5,000 in legal expenses,
Right.
not a lot. It's not the dollar amount so much as where are we going? Where are we ending up? And are you coming back again in a couple months? Because we got to move on. I guess I would just like to see more partnership. I understand Cook County, has this agreement with for this land, and the property owner and the real estate agent should have known there's a snowmobile trail going through your property. Yeah. So I certainly supported last time, and I support this time. Yeah. Let's fight this. I also would like to see more cooperation with the business community of Lutsen. This really affects them. I mean, we have other snowmobile trails. We shut down that connector trail. There's some businesses there that I would like to, show up and say, you're supportive of this, and it's not just us 5 commissioners here spending taxpayer dollars without some more support, so. And
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Has the Lutsen Township approached you with any questions or monetary support?
I am stepping in late to this. I'm not aware of any
Okay.
questions or any discussions that way.
Okay, because we do have a business person on the township board that would be affected. So I don't know how far down we want to reach.
Right, and I'm just saying that, okay, I'll support this again this time, and I hope Tyson's doing his job and these people realize not a good way to enter our community, make bad feelings, but I have faith that the right thing is going to come about. And if it goes on, I
Well,
would like
this
to
would-
see more public support.
Commissioner White.
This will be setting a precedent. People come into the county, you got a dog kennel here, you got whatever, a skateboard park over here, and you're going to build here, and then dogs make too much noise. Skateboarders are skateboarding too late. When you buy property in an area, I think it's incumbent on the real estate people to be honest and to point all of this out, and that this is existing. And you are choosing as a new property owner to have these entities adjacent to your property. And if there should be a change, it should not be those entities that have been there. But maybe it ought to be, maybe you'd like to consider living someplace not right next to a dog kennel or right next to a skateboard park. And I believe that if one homeowner who might have really deep pockets decides that, I don't care. I don't care about snowmobilers. I don't care about all of this. I don't like them. Then why was there a purchase of this property initially? I mean, it was just, and so if that is allowed, then how can, going forward with other legal problems because of displeasure with what has already been existing and I don't like it, this could go on forever. I mean, on all facets, from this road is too dark, I'm 5 miles back in on a gravel road and it's too dark and why don't I have a street light? To, pick something, as absurd as it might sound. I don't believe that any of these, I believe anything could be a demand at some point.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner White. I hear what you're saying, and yeah, it comes up. All your examples they come up, right? And in this particular case, it's whatever. I was going to say it's a little different, but maybe it's
more
not.
complicated.
Right, but as far as the cooperation is concerned, I'm assuming the business owners that are affected are going to be right there with us if there needs to be witnesses or testimony or whatever. I don't know how the legal proceedings work there, but were you asking for something further than that, Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I guess I would like to see letters of support from the Lutsen Township and from those businesses, and somebody I would like to see that they also are agreeing this is worth fighting for.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner York. Commissioner. Administrator York.
I've just been demoted. Yeah, so, I think that I understand the desire to have the business community weigh in on this. This $5,000, of course, is being requested with the hope that there will be a settlement and that we won't have to go further. And I think, if that is not the case, and I certainly understand and appreciate Commissioner Hawkins' concerns, that we could be opening a door to something much bigger and more expensive. That's always a possibility when you enter into litigation. But I think we probably need to cross that bridge if and when we get to it. And I agree that at that point, we probably do need to talk to the business community in the township about our next steps and how we coordinate to develop the strongest strategy we can have and also potentially to share costs.
Other comments or questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I think he made it.
We've done this, did we?
Yeah, but I was
Oh.
afraid because I already did the second making of the motion
Oh.
earlier in the meeting, so I didn't want to say anything this time.
All right.
Second, I'll second.
No, we have I think we got it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioners. Moving on to item 8B. This is regarding the Caribou Lake surface water ordinance pertaining to wake surfing on Caribou Lake. We did get a presentation last fall from property owners around the lake who have organized to put together a petition, which approximately 70% of the property owners around the lake have signed in favor of, requesting that the county establish an ordinance to restrict wake surfing on Caribou Lake. We did have what we called a hearing last fall, but we did not have a draft ordinance to share at that time. And so in terms of the process for getting an ordinance approved, we do have to have a hearing over the specific ordinance that's been drafted, and that's part of your agenda packet today. And we're proposing to do that at 9 o'clock on February 14th. That's a regular business meeting day for the board. Then next steps, if after receiving that public comment, the board elects to approve the ordinance, then it would be sent to the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, who would have 120 days to either approve or deny the ordinance. And so that would be the process moving forward to get the ordinance approved. I should also mention that looking at state statutes about the authority of counties to set these kinds of ordinances, we are prohibited from actually restricting or prohibiting certain kinds of equipment from our lakes. So in other words, we couldn't just say we're banning wake boats from the lake. But we do have the ability to restrict activities. And so that's why the ordinance is worded the way that it is. And so that's kind of that, and I would certainly be happy to answer any questions there might be.
So just to clarify, in the ordinance, it refers to wake surfing. That is the activity that
Did
would
I
be
say
prohibited.
wakeboarding?
No.
No.
Okay. Yeah, wake surfing.
Thank you for that clarification, and the wake enhancement also, because I was like, wonder why we're saying it that way. So thank
Yeah.
you for clarifying
Yeah.
why we're saying it that way.
Other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to schedule a hearing for public comments on the proposed ordinance to restrict wake surfing on Caribou Lake in Lutsen Township for 9 a.m. on Tuesday, February 14th, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we have a motion and support. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. And Adriana, you got the second?
Correct.
Okay,
Commissioner
great,
Hawkins.
great. All righty. Item 8C regards the American Rescue Plan Act funding that we were notified about toward the end of last year. This is a new allocation through the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund, and it's a windfall of a little over $2 million, $2,039,902.62 to be exact, that can be used for a variety, excuse me, I'm sorry, my allergies are acting up, that can be used for a variety of purposes. I wanted to get feedback from the board today on some of the priorities that you all have regarding the expenditure of these dollars. And one thing that I want to make you aware of is I've been approached by Jason Hale with the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. He is interested in using some of this funding to support local housing projects. And so I do want to put together a budget that I can present to you at the meeting on February 14th. And again, wanted to get your feedback on some of the other issues that we might want to address through the use of these dollars. I do know that in addition to housing, we've talked about using a substantial portion of the funding toward the implementation of our capital improvement plan, which we're currently developing. We know that we have a lot of deferred maintenance in county buildings. We also have some space needs that need to be addressed. And obviously, $2 million would not be enough to fully address them, but it would get us a start and reduce the need to use levy funds and to do bonding. So that's another important potential use of the dollars. I know also that we have talked about using the funding or potentially using these dollars for childcare, which is another priority that the board has established. And then also, let's see, what else is there? I guess those are kind of I'm sorry, also the wage increases that were approved in the last month. We have talked about using some of these dollars to offset, again, the need to use levy funding, fund balance to cover those increases. So, again, I'm just seeking feedback from the board about how you would like to potentially allocate these dollars.
One thing I'd like to comment on is I just think housing has been identified as our top priority by our community. It's something we personally have worked very hard on, and so I believe a significant portion of those dollars should go towards housing. Other commissioners?
That would be my choice, the housing.
And I don't know that it's a choice, it's going to be a blend.
Yes.
Obviously, of, I believe, all of these, but Commissioner Mills. Oh, Commissioner Hawkins.
I guess I agree, housing's our number one priority. I am really interested in see some dollar figures on our CIP plan and current, what we need to do. What roofs, what boilers, what do we need to do in our buildings in the next couple of years that we shouldn't put off for another, before we definitely say a dollar amount, I guess. I don't.
I would like to amend my statement. The buildings, to take care of buildings. I changed my mind. The housing is starting. There are a lot of other entities as being part of it at this moment in time, but we still have ownership of buildings that require care.
Administrator Yorkie, do you want to address kind of what we have with the capital improvement plan and what we have for our community coming forward?
Sure, and that's actually, I was going to do that under Administrator's report.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do have follow-up meetings scheduled. We did have open house sessions back on December 1st to inform the public where we are in the process of developing this plan and to share information about the condition of our facilities. Excuse me. And we told participants at that time that we were planning another set of meetings to take place in February to follow up with additional information and specifically to bring forward cost estimates of deferred maintenance and also for a proposed new space. We know that we have space deficiency at the Law Enforcement Center. Also in this building, we are short of office space. So we are bringing that forward on February 16th. We do have open house meetings scheduled, and I was going to talk about that in more detail in a little bit. And I will do that after we kind of talk through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so this is one-time money, $2 million. We have previously received ARPA funding and set a good chunk of it, close to 500,000 for
580 is what sticks in my mind.
for one housing project, and now there is potentially another housing project that is a good possibility for somewhere around potentially $700,000. So, and that is, in my mind, our community's top priority is housing. So that reduces our additional ARPA dollars to 1.3 million. And yes, we have significant capital needs and building needs. The last number I heard from deferred costs was $12 million. So if we apply this ARPA dollars to that, it all adds up. However, we're going to have to bond if we're going to address our capital needs. And so I want to make sure we're leveraging our cash the best way we can. And I think housing is, yes, we have to take care of buildings, absolutely, but housing is kind of our acute, we're doing it, let's get this done. But then also, we all know that childcare is a huge part of that too. So I don't know where that fits into this money at all, but I suspect that it could be helpful. Also, I want to make sure our taxpayers aren't, we're minimizing the impact on the levy with our wage adjustment. And so I'm hoping at some point we're going to have to incorporate that into the levy 100%. But I'm really hoping we can cushion that impact by tapering us off of one-time monies to make that adjustment. So I would really like us to have some kind of, I don't even know what you call it, some kind of inverse equation to get us, to wean us off of that. And that's going to take time. In the previous board, we decided it would be some of this money, nothing specific, but some of this money, fund balance as well, and levy dollars to make that transition. And so I think the housing request fits right in here, and beyond that, I think we're going to have to dive into some numbers a lot more. But that 12 million stands out to me. I mean, that's huge, and that's just deferred maintenance. That doesn't address our space needs.
Yes, and that is a rough estimate. We're refining that, and that would be over 5 years, making improvements to our buildings, catching up on deferred maintenance. And so that is, and I myself have not seen the detailed numbers because we just recently met with CRBPS, our consultant on the capital improvement plan, to tweak, to confirm all the assumptions that are going into like replacement schedules and the actual condition of mechanical systems in all our buildings. So that's kind of a moving target, but in terms of orders of magnitude, that is approximately what that number is going to be. And that does not include potential new space. So you're right, Commissioner, I expect that we will have to bond, and I realize that, to whatever extent we use this new ARPA funding, it's only going to address a very small portion of the overall financial need.
My hope would be also that in St. Paul, we see some relief. We've had a little glimpse at what is the proposed budget and some proposals that Governor Walz has provided. But I think in the very short term, we're going to find out a lot more information that will provide us guidance when we're looking at budgets.
Madam Chair, if I could, getting back to Commissioner Hawkins' comment, which I think is a very good one. I was proposing to come forward with a draft budget at the February 14th meeting. The next open house meetings are scheduled for February 16th, which is 2 days after that meeting. And perhaps what would be helpful, if there's an agreement that housing is a priority, perhaps we could, I could request a decision from the board on how much of the funding we're going to use for housing on February 14th, with the balance of the $2 million to be decided on at a later time.
I would be very comfortable with that. How about other commissioners?
Agree.
And I think that would be helpful, because I know the HRA is wanting to move forward in discussions on the Birch Grove project that Commissioner Mills referred to. And so that would be, I think that would be helpful to the HRA to at least have that assurance as soon as possible.
Any other questions or comments? I think that's an excellent suggestion, and given the close proximity of that February 14th meeting and when we have the community engaged in the capital improvement plan, I think that's wise. Commissioner Mills.
And we're not in a, thank you, Madam Chair, we're not in a, well, certainly the housing projects, we do not want to hold up.
Mm-hmm.
But as in terms of the balance of the ARPA funding after that, we're not in a rush to assign it. I mean, there's no timeline or deadline.
No.
So we can really take a step back and try to incorporate that into our larger financial management plan and capital improvement plan, and just potential dollars. And maybe as time goes on, the state will reveal what changes we'll be getting, both as far as state built and then there's always federal built, which is a whole other thing we can't really count on, but it'll all come together, huh? By itself.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, well, February 14th, we'll have some decisions to make.
Okay. Very good. Any other direction or comments or questions about that proposal?
Not seeing or hearing any, so.
Okay, great. Thank you, commissioners. Then, as I mentioned, we are planning to hold our second series of open house meetings on February 16th. That's a Thursday. Commissioner White, I want to not thank you for your suggestion that we hold one of those meetings up in Hoveland. And I think there's a lot of value in trying to try to go where people are. In terms of the logistics of planning these open house meetings, our consultant is based in Duluth, and the Twin Cities, the project principal actually is from Wisconsin. And so getting them all up here is something that obviously costs money. And so the way that we set up the December meetings was to do it in one day to minimize the amount of time or money that we would spend on lodging, and also make it as efficient for our consultant as possible. So the way that we did the meetings in December is we had them all in the courthouse. One was at 10 a.m., the second was at 2 p.m., and then we had an evening meeting at 6 p.m. And so if we're thinking about doing it a different way this time, which I'm not opposed to, but I do see some concerns that I think need to be addressed. If we, say, have one meeting up in Hoveland, one here at the courthouse, and then one down in Lutsen or Schroeder, it would make it easier for people in those locations to attend the meeting. But, for example, if we do the 10 a.m. meeting in Hoveland, there might be people from Hoveland who work during the day who would not be able to attend that.
10 a.m. is a day that when people are working, they're working at 10 a.m.
Right.
There's an issue, yes.
Right. And so I guess what I'm getting to is, in order to provide the greatest access to all folks in the county as much as possible, You know, that evening meeting, and I should mention too, the evening meeting back in December was the most lightly attended one. We had the most people at 10 a.m., had about a dozen, and then we had half as many at 2 p.m. And then we just had a couple of people at the 6 p.m. meeting, which was interesting to me. I actually expected the evening meeting would be the most heavily attended. So, again, in the interest of trying to make sure that these meetings are as accessible to residents as possible, wherever we hold the evening meeting, it's not going to be, you know, if we do that, say, in Hoveland, then it's going to be harder for people in Lutsen to get to that meeting.
Well, I mean, there should be one in Hoveland and up the Gunflint Trail and perhaps these consultants do not have to be the spokespeople, because I'm making the assumption that between you, who have been heavily engaged with these consultants, and then probably Brian Silence, but there will be people that will be able to answer questions that will come up, and we know what they have presented, and they have the handouts, and that could be, we don't actually need them as the talking heads, though, because if a question is asked that you don't know the answer to, then we'll get back to them, that's all.
They are the technical experts, and there were a lot of questions that came up at the first session that we as staff were unable to answer. So you're right, I mean, we could do it that way. That is not the way that we've planned to do these, and our goal is to have the plan completed by the end of March. And so we would be talking about, again, potentially drawing out the conclusion of the project. And I understand the importance of engaging the public, and that's why we're doing it the way that we're doing it. But if we add additional public meetings, it's going to change the timeline again.
And why is the timeline so important?
Because we have really acute needs that we need to start addressing.
Well, we've left the acute needs for a few years, so surely if we wait another month or two, you know, I would hope that there aren't going to be roofs collapsing or anything like that.
I would hope so too.
I also think it's because of our budget timelines. And as we get ready to establish our budget, we're doing a lot of work late spring. So it's really important we have this done. I wonder about, is it possible to provide through any of those sessions a Zoom option for people, or to videotape one of the presentations?
Well, we did do that
right
in December.
I'm just talking about for February.
We're planning to do that
Okay.
and post that on the county's website.
Because then that would give people an opportunity to at least see that, and then they could send in their feedback.
Yeah. The other thing I would mention is we're planning for the February meeting to have a longer presentation at the beginning, because there's a lot more information to share. And so, Commissioner White, to your concern about making sure that people have access to the information, I think that's going to be a really important means for us to get that to folks who may not be able to attend in person.
Commissioner Hawkins.
I would just like, I do think it's important that we give opportunities to the public, not just in this room. And I understand we've got this set, and I think this is a good plan for that day. But I'm thinking back to other groups and I've been involved in, and when I was PTA and promoting, you know, levy increases or bonding or whatever it was, we had a group that was available to go to by invitation to other groups to, we'll answer your questions. And I think that would be an opportunity if there's an organization that says, we want to meet on this day, can you come at this time and explain your process to us? Same thing in the West End or up the trail. If there's groups already formed that are meeting on a regular basis, so we know we'll show up and there's people there, instead of saying, we're going to do it on this date, and everybody says, well, why'd you pick that date?
Good point.
So I would say we should be open to invitations from other groups that are asking us to provide them information.
Good point. Very good point.
And I would be very receptive to that.
And I think we could all just take turns, we're depending on our availability to attend also. And
And certainly attend in our own districts where we're asked to
Yes.
participate. Yeah.
I think that's probably, we might get greater public participation that way. Particularly since we're still in the heart of darkness in winter, and it gets dark and, right after your afternoon nap, it's dark. So to then have to go out, it's like it's a stretch, so.
What's an afternoon nap?
You're not wise enough to know that. You'll get there.
When you're ready.
Demographics.
Well, so I really appreciate those suggestions, and for the record, I'm happy to meet with any groups that may want to invite us to come and present information about.
And I'm expecting the listening public is writing this down and hearing this, making note.
And I
And
would
your phone
also,
number, James, is
my phone number is 218-387-3687.
3687. Thank you.
And the other thing I would offer, so we're going to do the open house meetings on February 16th, and I would like to, at some point thereafter, we would be ready to go out and talk to other groups in the community. And it would be ideal if we could get those meetings scheduled within the, say, 4 to 6 weeks after we have the open house, just so that there's adequate opportunity to get that feedback and potentially incorporate it. The other thing to
I'm
make,
sorry, can you say that again? 4 to 6 weeks after the open house feedback?
yes.
I'd like to tighten that up a little bit. That's a long,
It is. I mean, I'm trying to look at so the other thing we're doing in addition to the capital improvement plan, and I'm going to mention this in a moment, is starting our strategic plan process, which is going to be very time consuming because we have a short timeline for that. And so I just want to be realistic about my availability. I don't want to overcommit and then underdeliver. And I would be supportive of shortening that timeline, Commissioner. I think, let's say 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, within the month after February 16th, that would work better. I'm also going to be away for part of that time. I have a personal obligation. But yes,
for me, after a meeting, a month is an eternity. So I usually want to give feedback just
for me, it's the blink of an eye.
Yeah, well, yeah, both, right?
Right, yeah. Okay, well.
But I mean, whatever works, whatever you can handle, whatever you're able to do, I appreciate that.
Just
And
know
I
we're a
will-
team, it's not just you.
Yeah.
Right.
All
and
of
I
us are
And
in
I will
this.
rely on the 5 of you to help connect me with folks who want to have that presentation, so. All righty, moving on to strategic planning. We are having our first meeting of our steering committee on Friday. Very excited to get this process underway. We're going to be using a resource from the University of Kansas. It's got a community toolbox that assists groups in putting together community plans, identifying community priorities, et cetera. When we talked about this process the last time, we talked about what is the scope of the plan. Are we talking about like county priorities or organizational priorities, right? Like community, out in the community priorities. And I think this plan needs to really focus on organizational priorities and how we position ourselves to meet needs over the coming 4 to 5 years based on things that we're seeing in the community right now, like our growing population. How do we ensure that we have, for example, processes that are going to enable us to survive employee transitions? And the example I always cite is our maintenance director, who knows everything about our buildings, but that information to date has been primarily in his head. With the CIP, the capital improvement plan process, we are externalizing that information, getting it into spreadsheets and applications that we can use, that multiple people can access, so that we can have multiple people managing and updating that information. That's the kind of effort that I see as very important moving forward, not just in terms of how we manage buildings, but really all our operations, right? We need to have processes and procedures in place so that if somebody who has a lot of institutional knowledge leaves the organization, that we're in a good position to carry on. And so I'm seeing the focus as being really like on the organization and being able to ensure that we're able to deliver services at the level that we currently do moving forward.
Commissioner Mills.
When we hired you, did you realize all of these challenges that were just waiting for?
Well, I mean, I knew there were challenges, but really, I mean, I think, so we took a run at this about a year ago and then put it on the back burner. I think that's actually a good thing, because a year ago, I didn't know what I know now. I mean, the last 2 years have been a process of really learning the organization, building relationships, getting into a position where now I think I'm able to serve in a leadership role much better than I did initially when I knew much less.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's helped kind of crystallize my thoughts about what this process should be and what the needs are. And I haven't gotten here alone. I mean, we have really great leadership in this organization, really stellar department directors who understand their departments and their work processes. And so all of us working together, I'm really confident that we can do this internally. We don't need an external consultant. It is a heavy lift. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. But I feel much better positioned to do this now than I would have a year ago. So, yeah, I think we're in a good position.
If I may, Madam Chair, I just imagine you, James, flabbergasted daily on why isn't there a system for this? And I appreciate you jumping in and trying to, develop our systems and get us on a more sustainable path. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I need to recognize, again, the department directors who are, I mean, somebody like Rowan Watkins. I mean, he's, and Rena Rogers before him. I mean, they've really been thoughtful about how to put processes in place to ensure the longevity of our systems and ensure predictability in operations and budgeting moving forward. And that's really how we need to operate across the organization. And we are to varying degrees in different departments. But I think there's a history, we haven't had an administrative form of government for all that long. And so when you don't have like one captain with a hand on the wheel, it leads to a lot of discontinuity in the way things are done over time. And I think that's one of the other important goals, is to try to create some continuity so that whether I'm here another, 5 years or 10 years, and for the record, I want to be here a long time because I love living in Cook County.
Don't start with 5 then,
Okay,
10, 15,
10,
20.
20. But it's important that, again, whatever transition we have in terms of staff, that we are able to continue operating and that we have as much redundancy as possible. And that's hard to achieve in a small organization, right? When you have 5 people working in the auditor's office, that doesn't create a lot of opportunity for like everybody to be trained on payroll, right? And so we need to, as much as possible, and to the extent that we can with the resources that we have, try to create redundancy and create systems that give folks in the organization a common operating picture and the ability to step in when somebody leaves. So, really excited to begin this process. A lot of work to be done. I'm really grateful. I'd like to thank Commissioner White for agreeing to be on the steering committee. I did it.
Well,
And you said you wouldn't.
And you should know, I mean, when you say hiring an outside consultant, another one, in-house, I mean, the school district, I mean, if you're not sitting there, we know what the issues are.
Yeah.
Outside people, Why bring them up to speed? If anybody can really define how this organization should be running, it ought to be the folks that are here, not somebody from the outside world.
Yep.
So if we don't know our mind, then perhaps we are not in the right positions to be. Maybe somebody else ought to be here running the county.
I'm not sure what you're referencing, but I agree.
That's right, if we're not doing our jobs, and we
Yes.
don't know what needs to be done, then maybe it's time for us to step down and let somebody else be doing it. That's all there is to it. Taxpayers have expectations, and I'd like to raise their expectations so there we go. And you're going to ask for a seat reassignment for the next one, I'm sure.
Wait, what month is it?
So, yeah.
Seating arrangements can change at any time. All classroom teachers know that.
Separate these two. Okay.
All right.
The last thing I wanted to mention this morning is, I said last time, I've volunteered to participate in a paid family leave advisory group through the Association of Minnesota Counties that is working directly with legislators who are carrying forward a bill to provide paid family leave across the state. This would be mandated of all employers, and it would be paid for through a payroll tax of 0.6%. The proposal is to split that evenly between the employer and the employee. And there are concerns that that AMC has about this related to existing labor agreements and also existing benefits packages, which in some cases already provide for this. And the concern is we as counties don't want this legislation to add additional costs that we're already incurring. So in other words, the legislation needs to take into account benefits that we already have in place. And so there's a lot to sort through because it's not uniform across all 87 counties. We all have different benefit structures, and some counties offer paid family leave already. We do not. But we've talked about it, and we know that our employees are keenly interested in it. The other thing to note is that the proposal is to provide 12 weeks of paid family leave, but somebody could also have, in the same year, 12 paid weeks of illness leave. For example, if you have a child, you take 12 weeks off, then you have a diagnosis of a serious illness, you could take another 12 weeks of paid time off. And then let's say you're in the military and you get deployed. You could take another 12 weeks of paid leave. And so potentially under this bill, you have a situation, and it's unlikely, but it's still possible, that an employee could have 36 weeks of paid leave. And so there are just concerns about how that would impact the operations of county governments. And so all of these issues are being sorted through, and there will be more information coming forward. But it would be an additional payroll cost to us if this bill moved forward. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think having paid family leave would be a really good thing in a lot of ways. But we just need to make sure that we understand what the cost implications are, and that however this bill is finalized, that it doesn't adversely affect our current benefits.
Well, thank you for serving with AMC and being part of this exploration, and I'll look forward to seeing what comes out of it. Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right, thank you so much, Administrator York. So now, employee concerns, commissioner concerns. Do we have any commissioner reports? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as you all remember, that for 8 years I've represented ARDC, Arrowhead Regional Development Commission and Board, and this past election, the folks who have been chairman of these two entities either retired or were not re-elected. And so I was approached to consider being chair of both commission and board. And so I did commit, yeah. I sent my resume off. And as of last Thursday, I was elected board chair for ARDC board, which they do need a commissioner to be on that board as chair. And then as the commission. Now, there are two different entities. The board is the one with Andy Hubley, who's the director, who guides everything, grant money and all of that. The commission is everybody who represents an area. So from our area, we have Gordon Salisbury, and we have Bobby Deschamps. There's many different categories. There's representative of a town of 10,000, of 5,000, township representatives. So that makes up the commission. So I will be, as usual, going to the meetings, but I'll be sitting in a different position for, I don't know how long. The last chairman was Dick Brenner, and he was there 6 years, so. I think what I've discussed with the director is that it would be nice to rotate every couple of years, but at our meeting last week, we had no vice president. So they're going to search around and get somebody, hopefully, that will back up the chairman for one thing. But, and I would be looking for some fresh turnover every few years. So that's a possibility. And just to give you an example of ARDC involvement, the Superior Hiking Trail Association has approached ARDC with some money for Andy to coordinate volunteers and staff to go out and to photo each of the campsites on the Superior Hiking Trail, from the beginning down all the way to the border. Now, it seems like a real impossible endeavor, but it really isn't, because they have equipment, they have a technology guru there at the ARDC office who did that with the whole North Shore. So you can go online and you can see bit by bit along the shore where they need to do mitigation, where it's okay, where it isn't. So that's what they're going to do. So any of us can volunteer with our phone and go out and do a certain section of the Superior Hiking Trail, take a photo, send it back to the office, and when all of that is done, obviously it won't start for a while. It may take a couple of seasons to get it done, but it will be then available for everybody to see a campsite, which I think is pretty awesome in the future. Okay. And then I'm also part of the Arrowhead counties, and I just continued being treasurer there, so Sister Mary and I work together on that.
All right.
So that's my present update.
Thank you so much. Other commissioners? Commissioner Hoffman.
Well, I wanted to report, we had our ARC meeting on Friday, and we also then had a joint meeting with the advisory board, who Bill Myers from Grand Portage is the Cook County rep on that, so it was nice to be at a meeting with him. It was the first time we've been in the same room for a meeting, and it was nice to have chat with him afterwards about ARC. And I just want to, again, especially Commissioner White, I am just really impressed with ARC and their staff and their director. And they are very open to giving tours. If you are interested in going, we can set that up. It's a wonderful, wonderful facility. And I do have, so at our joint meeting, we went over a recidivism. Say that word.
Recidivism.
Report, and we got really good information from the last time this was done. Numbers, it just proves they're doing a good job there. Two of the things that came out, though, talking about legislature and bills that are down in St. Paul right now. One is about community corrections and probation funding, which AMC, it's on our legislative agenda. We need to make sure we say we need to have the state pay their fair share, because they've been dropping. They're supposed to pay 50%, and they haven't done that for years. We don't think that we'll ever get back to 50%, but we need it increased. So there's one bill that we need to encourage our senator and representative to support. The other one, there's a bill that will affect our AJC, Arrowhead Juvenile Corrections Facility. There, and it is about disciplinary room time, and they're concerned that will, if that bill passes or that language is included, that it will severely impact how they provide services at AJC for the kids that are there.
And where is that facility located?
I don't know.
This'll
It's in Duluth. I don't know exactly.
It's in Duluth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And Becky is really good about giving you the whole tour and explaining all of why this is so important. I do have a handout that I meant to send on, so you can send it out to her, to everybody. I'll get that in the mail. She mailed it to me yesterday, so, about that disciplinary room time, that we need to make sure that our representatives know this would affect Cook County and our ability to provide services at AJC.
That kind of sounds like solitary. Is it kind of like that, or?
Yeah, so disciplinary room time is used when a resident, child, kid, has emotional or maybe acts out in a way that is harmful to the other residents there, and then they move them to their room, time out. And I know it has been misused in other places, in other states. Disciplinary room time at AJC is overseen by the Department of Corrections. They have to file reports. It's not used on an endless basis like it has been abused in other places. And so I think that was whoever introduced it to St. Paul wanted to make sure it didn't happen. Well, it's necessary for the safety of other people in that facility. We can't just totally eliminate it. That's the concern, so. And I know they're working on that, and AMC is aware of this also. So just so you know, that's something else we need to have on our radar, and I encourage you to go visit those facilities if you desire.
Thank you so much.
That's all I have on that one.
All right. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think each of us have something that we really want to talk to our legislators about. Maybe we can start mentally preparing a list, so when we go down to the legislative session, not only verbally meeting with Representative Scraba and whoever else AMC is going to set us up with, I assume he would be one of the first ones, maybe Representative Hochschild too, I don't know, that we can verbally say and then leave them something, leave them a list. These are the concerns that we have for you to consider from Cook County.
I think that's
And we could
excellent.
get that all together before we go.
Absolutely, and more than before our time in St. Paul. On February 10th, we've provided an invitation for our senator and representative to come to Cook County, so we have an opportunity to speak with them. So it would be nice if we have something prepared and can distribute that to help remind them of what we speak to and what we talk about in our meetings with them. So thank you for bringing that up. Commissioner Mills.
On that note, I think that's very important. I also would like, and maybe you said this and I missed it, but I would also like us to get a mutual letter with the school district, the hospital, Grand Portage. Is that what you just said? Did I just miss?
This
Oh.
was just referring
To our county,
yes.
I would also like that community-wide one that we can bring down there, because I think that would be extremely powerful to have all community leaders say, yes, we need this, because it's one thing to have one, fragmented organizations or whatever, but to have a whole community on board that would be quite powerful.
And
So-
on February 10th, we'll have an opportunity to listen to all the leadership of Cook County to hear what their priorities are so that we can be all on the same page. But I like that idea of having a joint letter.
Yeah, I was just thinking through the community leadership group that could be an opportunity. That'll be after that, but before our legislative
Right.
session. And so so we can get that feedback, put it together, maybe present it to the community leadership group for feedback, and I don't know, just logistics could be tricky, timing and all that, but.
Oh, right, because if it like goes before the school board, I mean, if
Right.
they would have to approve it. Of course, they could call a special meeting just to approve something,
Right.
yes.
But, and that's the case for all the boards,
Yes,
you know,
it's all-
so I don't know if we can make it happen, I just think it'd be awesome if we could, so.
We certainly need to be supportive of all the entities in our community and know the big picture for Cook County.
Well, I do feel like most of the organizations have a very similar priority list,
Yeah.
so.
Commissioner Mills.
I wanted to thank Commissioner Storley for her role and leadership and congratulate you for the election with the ARDC. That's awesome. It's a wonderful organization and very powerful and helpful in our community. So I really appreciate you stepping up there. That's exciting. Also wanted to share the sad news that Commissioner Pete Walsh from Lake County passed away. I had the opportunity to work with Pete on a number of different boards, and he was always had a great sense of humor and really excellent values, and just really sad to hear he's gone. That'll impact a number of our regional meetings, as well as, of course, Lake County and Pete's family. Also wanted to share that we had another AMC Cannabis Committee meeting, and it's really interesting, just the whole arc of that committee, where it started, where it went. It's just really interesting. There is, I think it's passed 3 different committees in the House now, the cannabis bill. It doesn't sound like, well, how can I summarize? Let's see, I've got a document. I should probably just pass this on. Long and short, from my perspective, is it doesn't sound like there's going to be much local control over permitting. It's still not clear where the enforcement's going to be, where the expertise is going to be for the permitting, and then also the enforcement. And, you know, there's 3 different licenses that they're proposing. A grower's, a processor, or a manufacturer or something like that, and then the retailer. And all 3 of those have very different structures or regulations, and so it gets quite complex. Interesting discussions at the committee level. There is no appetite aside from the perspective I was bringing for municipal dispensary or a county dispensary. I know the city of Grand Marais has expressed interest there. Currently, the law does not allow liquor stores to also dispense marijuana, but they are changing that so that they can. However, the city has not yet incorporated that business model or infrastructure into their planning for the new liquor store, which they are planning, although they intend to have it in there. But just my experience touring different dispensaries around the area is that it's a significantly different business model. It's much more like a pharmacy than it is, I often feel like in liquor stores, it feels almost like a grocery store. You just kind of walk the aisles, and, you know, it's got that similar ambiance. And in other states, most grocery stores have beer and alcohol. But with the marijuana dispensary, I feel it's much more like a pharmacy, and there's just, I don't know, a different level of, well, there's certainly stigma, but just a different level of rules and regulations and different precautions that need to be taken into account. So when it comes to the city municipal liquor store, I was and am always very supportive of the revenues supporting the community and helping the taxpayers of Grand Marais. I think there will be significant opportunity with cannabis legislation to also benefit that, but I would like the benefits, the revenue benefits to be countywide. I would be disappointed if it was just towards the city, and so I'm hoping we can somehow in the EDA work towards that. We don't have the capacity as an organization to take this on. We don't have immunity. This is out of our wheelhouse, but again, I just want to see revenues benefit the entire community instead of just the city. So what else, what are the takeaways from that whole discussion? Still a lot of concern, anger, fear about the impacts this will have on communities, impacts this will have in children, and those that are struggling with substance abuse, or substance use even. And then also concerns about law enforcement. And it's just so interesting hearing about it because they're expecting law enforcement costs to go down with this legislation passing versus higher costs with trying to navigate enforcement. I guess they're no longer training drug dogs to smell cannabis or go after that because it's legal in just too many places. Because that was a significant concern and the cost of that. And then it's not clear on the public health side of things, but that's where I think everybody is on a similar page that, hey, state, if you're gonna pass this, you have to help provide the public health services, the costs that are gonna be going on with that, whether it's just education or it's dealing with more substance use and abuse. There just really needs to be funding dedicated for that. And I think that's probably AMC's best leverage point, but they are still trying to inform the legislation moving forward, but it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of wiggle room there. So it's really interesting. We'll see what happens. Seems like it's fast-tracked, but it still has a long ways to go. It doesn't sound like there's nearly the support in the Senate as there is in the House, so we'll see what happens. AMC kind of wonders if part of this almost strong-arming from the House is just a negotiating point for the Senate, so, and we're just counties trying to pick up any crumbs we can or have a seat at the table, so. AMC's been really great, though, about advocating for our interests. On that note, we haven't talked about this in a meeting. What are everyone's first impressions or thoughts about that concept of a municipal dispensary?
My experience in visiting dispensaries in the state of Washington is to be separate, not to be part of a municipal operation. It's like going into a pharmacy, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, out there, they've got a myriad of aisles, well, 3, the larger one, the smaller one, not. But it's a definite stopping place. I don't like see mingling beverages with cannabis.
Would you be open to a county or a county or city-run facility dispensary? Is that, or that's, I guess that's what I was asking.
Who would run it as a county?
Well, that's just it. It'd have to be some kind of partnership with the city is what I was imagining. Because I think the city has strong enough interest that, and most of our economic activity is in the city proper, so whereas we would have the authority to have it outside of the city limits, I don't think that would serve our community to, it would just, I assume be competing with the city, and that's not my style. I'd rather collaborate if at all possible, so. But I just know the city's resources are not as broad as the counties. They don't have as many resources to leverage necessarily, and so I do see an opportunity to partner on that respect. But they do have the business model and kind of that structure in place already, but.
I guess I have to think a little bit more about that. I've read a lot of information through AMC, but I haven't really thought about at this level between the city and the county. Commissioner Hawkins.
So I was looking up the bills just the other day, read through a couple, and I was a proponent of legalizing this. What I read the other day made me think, the state, there you are, again, doing something from the top down and not understanding how it's going to affect the people that you're making the rules for. I think it should just, let's stop right now. Let's not pass it right now. Let's take some more time, because I am in total support. It should come from the ground level, at the county level first, advising the state of how it would affect our communities. We should have the choice whether we want to buy in or not. And I did read, and I can't remember if it was Minnesota Reformer or was it MinPost, editorials about pros and cons of those. I just see what is being presented right now as not being good for counties. And whether or not we have it as an income source, yeah, I'm open to that idea, but the way it's proposed right now, we're not going to see anything from what's being proposed. So I'm glad AMC is advocating for counties, but I am not hopeful that they're going to pass a bill that makes sense for us.
Commissioner Sturley?
As far as opting out, I think you remember, Dave, the presentation we had from both Colorado and the state of Washington. It really puts a lot of pressure on counties who opt out. And I mean, we're the end of the road, but still, if we opt out, what will that do also? If we have that chance, I don't know.
I don't think they'll give it to us.
Doesn't sound like it.
No, yeah, it doesn't, yeah, I don't think, it sounds like that's off the table. Their biggest, and I share your concerns with the current legislation, and certainly shared those concerns with AMC, and they all get it. Everybody gets it. And everybody in that committee was hoping for more local control. And the way it was described by AMC is that the state does not want a patchwork system. They want it to be uniform. And so I get that too. I just wish there was some kind of blend, much like our alcohol and tobacco licensing. You know, we issue those. It's the state board that enforces and oversees, but it is a cooperation between the county and the state government, so, or the city and the state government, whatever jurisdiction you're in. But it doesn't sound like that's going that direction, at least now, and it's because of that fear of a patchwork system. But I think it's going to cause problems, just like you said, Commissioner Hawkins. So yeah, to try to chisel out any revenue we can, both because I think it would benefit the community, and also to counter the costs, I think would be prudent for the county. There was something else along those lines. Yeah. Oh, one other thing, they're asking about the education and what role public health should have, because right now, public health, it's the role of educating on tobacco and alcohol and substance abuse and misuse in our youth, in the schools, for the public at large. And I just saw it as an opportunity if there was a county/city dispensary, that you could have all kinds of education in there. Here's your stuff. Here's what it's going to do to you. Here's what it can do to your brain. This is the impacts, long-term impacts, all that kind of stuff. I think that would be a good opportunity for handing out pamphlets or information. Just like when you go to the pharmacy, you check a box saying, yes, I've been consulted on this, or I was offered consultation, and that sort of thing. And it was just interesting. The committee didn't, they're just like, yeah, whatever. And I was like, okay. Well, just an idea. So the reason I was asking the board as a whole about that concept of a public-owned dispensary is if it's worthwhile for me to ask the EDA or ask the city to start having conversations trying to prepare for this, or if it's just not even worth it until legislation is passed to know what's going to happen. So I was just, that's why I was fielding the question. I like to get ahead of it if at all possible, but maybe not.
I think maybe a general conversation would be fine, but, you know, clearly until legislation passes, we don't know exactly what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. I think that's all my report.
All right. Commissioner White?
Well, I've pretty much just hung up down at the hub. They're working on a restructuring, a total start from the bottom up, and again, was a very high-energy, committed group of people. They have a very hardworking board. It's not a board in name. They are hardworking and trying to create a site, an entity that supports the entire community's health, not just for the older population, but they have some incredible ideas and they operate on like a shoestring. It's amazing. So it's a good group, and I would say that's primarily.
And that strategic planning was
It's
it
coming.
completed on
No, they actually, once I got there they had decided, it was decided that they had way too many other things to decide before they started any strategic planning.
Okay.
It was like, that will be the next one. But it was indeed, started in the morning, went into the afternoon, and it was about everything from finances to building maintenance. I mean, very much the same. When was the wiring done in this building? And, I don't know, 42 years ago on this one part, and the other electrical panel doesn't even have a tag on it anymore, and there's nobody there that remembers what it was before the addition and what was the history and why doesn't the county own it, and did they own it or did they support it at one time, and why don't they, there's nobody there that knows, that has been through it. My thought was that they should get Sharon Bloomquist, who was there, but, so the strategic planning will be for another month. They have a lot of work that they're working on. Marketing, trying to make it's a place that people come to. It's not a senior center. It is an activity center for the community. So, it's a pretty inspiring group. Plus, they fed us. It's a common theme. I'm always happy if I'm fed, so.
I'll start
Commissioner
bringing
Mills.
food to these meetings.
Yeah. I know they just rebranded. I mean, not just, but it wasn't
Right,
that
yeah.
long ago. And to your point, I would like it if it was just like the downtown community center. Like isn't that kind of the vision?
I believe it is,
Yeah.
but I'm just stepping into this.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know they put a lot of time into
Oh,
the
yeah.
rebranding, and many of us still call it the senior center.
right.
This is the senior
And
center.
there is still an issue with it being called the hub, because when we developed the COVID hub
Oh, right.
on the county website,
Oh,
they got phone calls thinking they were the COVID hub. It's been interesting.
There was a hub restaurant that was the Harbor Inn before too, right? Wasn't that?
Golly. Wow. Well, thank you for that update. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
One meeting I attended recently, Soil and Water Conservation District, last Friday, we had a very unanticipated resignation. I shouldn't say it was unanticipated. We understand what happened, but John Tweest, who represents the Hovland Grand Portage area, resigned. He is just not able to attend and commit the time due to his responsibilities at Arrowhead Electric. And I think during the winter storm, it became pretty evident. So anyway, we are in the throes of looking for someone to represent that Hovland Grand Portage area. So I wanted the community to be aware of that, and we thank John for his service. He really provided a lot of insight and expertise to the group. Cook County Historical Society has met twice this month. They are holding off on the hiring of an executive director. As you know, their executive director resigned well before the pandemic. And they have decided again to hold off on filling that position and are examining their finances and kind of cleaning things up and looking at things in a new way. And I guess the last thing is just thanks to the people at the airport. They have dealt with an unbelievable amount of snow again and icy conditions on the runway and clearing around the lights. And we don't often think of it, but a little over a week ago, there was a night medical flight that came in, and everything was ready and prepared so that they could come in and do what they needed to do. And so I just want to thank the airport for all the great work they do for our community, because we don't hear about those things, we don't see those things, but they're happening all the time. So, and that would be the end of my report.
Did the Historical Society, did they do an update on their building that they're working on?
They are actually going to be hopefully speaking with our legislators on February 10th about bonding. If you recall, Senator Bach, or former Senator Bach, was all ready to present bonding at the last legislative session, and of course, things didn't get done. So they will be meeting with Senator Hoschild and Representative Scraba to talk about their needs for this session. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other items? If not, we have meetings coming up this evening here in this room at 6 o'clock. The multi-use trail for the new Gunflint will be discussed, and Engineer Haas will be back for that meeting. I know I'll be attending. I don't know if others are attending.
To
but-
Zoom. We can Zoom in, right?
This one is in person. The Zoom meeting is up for the Gunflint Trail. That's on Thursday. Engineer Haas is requesting people attend in person if at all possible. He does have his consultants coming in to do a presentation and would very much like to have the feedback there in the room at the community center. That's from 6 to 8 p.m., but there is a Zoom meeting available for that. And then we have community leadership coming up February 9th via Zoom. That's at 5:30. And as Administrator Yorkie mentioned, our capital improvement plan meeting, or actually 3 of them, an open house for our community at 10, 2, and 6 on Thursday, February 16th. And we have some correspondence, our sales tax report, lodging tax comparison, and anything else for the good of the order. If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Sturley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
So I sent you that.